Today we're going to learn how to make chili. I'm John Blanton, and as your chili chef today, I'll remind you that I was the first and only first place winner of the Texas Instruments Chili Cook-Off. And I'm going to explain how I did it, and how you'll be able to do it as well. So just pay attention and follow these details. The first thing you need to know is to use the right kind of meat. Above all, never make your chili with ground meat, with ground beef. Always start with a good solid cut of meat. I like the chuck roast. You could use sirloin, but I would not use a low quality of meat. So here's what you need. Get this at the store. 2 pounds minimum. No point making chili if you start with less than 2 pounds of meat. And the second thing you need to know when you make your chili is the proper attire. Make sure when you're making real Texas chili that you're properly dressed. You should be wearing your North Texas Skeptics t-shirt. Keep that in mind. This is the only way to make good chili. Good tools are important too. I have always use a good knife. This is a Henkel's general purpose knife, and this will be sufficient for working with the meat to begin with. The first thing you need to do when you start to make chili is cut off all the fat. I'm going to show you how this is done. Take the meat out of the package, throw the packaging away. You'll not be needing the packaging anymore. At this point, we cut away as much of the fat as possible. This is very important. Chili is a meat dish. You don't want your finished chili to be swimming in a bunch of grease. So you cut away all the fat and you throw the fat away. You do not keep that fat. The next thing you want to do is to dice the meat. The meat needs to be cut fairly finely. However, get it down small enough, and cooking the meat will disintegrate anyway. The idea behind chili is meat that has been cooked to the disintegration point. I cut it, in this case, I cut it into small pieces, and I put it in a pan because we're going to braise it later. So here we go. It takes a long time to cut the meat, but do not use ground meat. This is the only way. If you grind the meat, you cut up the fibers too much. Chili should have a lot of meat fiber in it. For dicing the meat, after cutting the meat up into small pieces, what we're left with is a nice amount of very well cut up meat. You notice the pieces are not too small. They're going to cook down. The whole idea behind chili is you cook the meat until it disintegrates. So what you see here is a bunch of chunks. There's going to be a bunch of stringy chili meat left when we get finished cooking it in the slow cooker. But before you cook it in the slow cooker, the next thing you have to do, the first thing you have to do before you cook it in the slow cooker, you have to sear the meat. You don't want to put the meat in the water and boil it without searing it first. So we'll do that. I'll put it on the stove and I'll sear it. Here we are, getting the pan hot. The meat's beginning to sizzle. You notice I didn't put any grease in here. The chili has some fat left in it. The meat has some fat left in it. We're going to use that. The meat's very on fat to cook it in. So I'll just keep heating it and I'll sear the meat. Okay, you can see here the searing process is well underway. There's a lot of liquid in there. This liquid has all come out of the meat, and this liquid contains a lot of the fat. We're going to drain this liquid off. We're going to drain away most of the fat. So what goes into the chili is going to be mostly fat-free meat. And the absence of fat, the absence of grease, is what helps to give the chili its bite, which is what the consumer really likes. You put the grease in there, it kind of dampens the bite and it smooths out the flavor. You don't want that. The chili has to be have a fairly harsh taste. So I'm going to now pour out this, and I'm going to put it in the slow cooker. I have the crock pot out now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put the meat in. I started with over 2 pounds of fresh meat. I doubt if this is 2 pounds left after trimming off the fat and boiling out the excess grease in the water. But I'm going to put this into the crock pot and add the appropriate amount of water, and I'm going to start the cooking process. I have the meat in the crock pot now. So next I'm going to put in a small amount of water. I'm going to start with a cup, and I'll add a little extra water if I think it needs more. A big part of making good chili is to have the correct spices. When I won the chili cook-off in 1985, I used Wick Fowler's 4-alarm or 5-alarm chili powder mix. I didn't tell anyone that I used a special mix, but that was within the rules. So I used the Wick Fowler chili spice mix, and now I'm using the Fiesta brand quick chili mix. So I'll put the spices in now. I'm going to start with 4 tablespoons, since this requires 4 tablespoons per pound of meat. So I'll start with that. That looks like that'll get it going. Let me stir that up a little bit. That's going to be just fine. So the next thing I need to do is put the lid on. The lid is on. The temperature is turned up to high. I'm going to let it cook at high for a while until the liquid starts to boil, and then I'm going to put it on low, and I'm going to cook it on low for at least 4 hours. So actually, as it turned out, I had to cook it on high in order to make any progress, but the chili came out all right. Here we go. Looking very good, as you can see here. I'll just show you. I'll dish up some and give you a view of it. Let me just dish up a bowl right here. I have some. I'll put it in this bowl here, and then I'll give you a look. Looks very good. So here's what it looks like. The meat is very tender. Like I said, it's not small pieces like you'd get if you use ground meat. It's cooked down to a point where the chili is stringy, and it is very spicy and is very good. I'll just take a taste. So I'll just have a taste of the chili now. Let me get a little bit on the spoon here. This is just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And what's going to go good with this is a nice Mexican beer. So, bon appetit.